I got a few comments on the previous podcast, the one called To Be or Not to Be. And the comments were basically pointing out that before I produce or publish heavy-duty material like that, then maybe I should give people a warning. And that was fair enough, very true. If you haven't watched that podcast yet, then here's the warning. Don't watch it unless you are a fairly solid character. If you're depressed or even worse, then don't watch it. It'll just make you feel worse, probably. Although you never know, because the strange thing is that with Schopenhauer, for example, people very often report that even though Schopenhauer is categorized as a pessimist philosopher, he actually cheers people up. Why does he cheer them up? Because they suddenly feel that they're not the only people on Earth that are thinking the things they're thinking. Anyway, this is a response to those comments about people needing to be really quite strong inside before they can listen to some of this content. So what I want to do in this podcast is present what is effectively the bare bones. It would take hours to explain the whole thing, but the bare bones of creating one's own personal power within. This isn't Nietzschean type power, it's not superhero type power. It's basically just to create something within yourself that is stable and strong. Because until you have that, then you cannot go and take your elevator trip down to hell and see what all the stuff is that's going on down there. It will just disturb you too much. So you can see on this slide that I've got showing a somewhat macho fist up in the air, but it portrays the sentiment of the whole thing very well, which is that we need inner strength. No one else is going to give it to us. Don't go looking to your parents or your colleagues or your friends or your gurus or whoever else to give you this inner strength. This is something you have to build yourself, and then it becomes yours. If you're reliant on somebody else's words or deeds or opinions or whatever, then it's not yours, is it? So I shall be drawing very heavily on Spinoza because he is the man where this is concerned. And well, I could wax lyrical about Spinoza for a long time, but I did a lot of stuff before I came across Spinoza, and Luis Almeida, who taught me a great deal of what I know about Spinoza. And while I got some benefits from the Gurdjieff work and from Zen meditation and so on, it wasn't until I came across Spinoza that all the pieces fell into place for me. Because the problem with a lot of so-called spiritual work is that it is in deep denial about the nature of our existence. It just cannot say a number of things. And it's going to get heavy duty here, I'm afraid, a little bit, so I'm going to warn you. If you are depressed or feel of a weak kind of constitution inwardly, then don't listen to this. But the reality is that Spinoza gives us what reality is about on a plate. He says there is no personal God, there is no purpose in the universe, there is no moral code. You are a tiny thing in a very big universe, and you are likely to be flattened at any moment in time. And he doesn't use those words exactly, but those are the sentiments. So Spinoza famously says, by virtue and power, I mean the same thing. Now, if you look up in the dictionary what virtue means, it isn't the same thing as what Spinoza means. In virtue is in the dictionary, virtue is said to be high moral standards. Spinoza doesn't believe in morals. He doesn't even believe in right or wrong. Here we go. I did warn you. So he's not talking about high moral standards. What is he talking about? He's talking more about what the Stoics used to talk about, the Greek Stoics. Virtue is an inner strength. So virtue and power are the same thing. Power for what? The power to be what you are. That is the only power that you want. You don't want the power to be somebody else. You don't want the power to acquire a whole pile of stuff that's useless and irrelevant. You just want the power to be what you are. And that sounds like it might be a a short-term project or a trivial thing, but it's neither of those things. It's actually quite a big thing to be what you are. That means that you take no notice of people's opinions, that you form your own understanding of things, that you have, in effect, your own being within yourself that is impervious to all the crap that's coming in from outside. So virtue and power is the same thing, the power to be what you are. So Spinoza goes even further in his writings, and he says, for example, the power of a lion is to bring down a gazelle, rip its throat out and eat it. The power of a strong man is to possibly dominate and exploit weak people. Spinoza sees nothing wrong with that, other than those people that are exploited need to find their own power. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked, but let's talk about the two ways that you get power within yourself. The first one is through understanding. Now, understanding is, all these people following these Eastern traditions and so on, as I, in fact, have done. You get no real understanding of the nature of existence. In fact, people go the other way. They might want to understand cosmic consciousness or samadhi or something, but do they understand the nature of their animal origins and the way all that works? Typically, no, they don't. They want to ignore all that stuff because it's boring. They want something novel, like samadhi. Well, I'm going to give you here a very condensed version of the understanding of the nature of our existence. And I've talked about this in other podcasts, but it's essential. If you don't understand this, you will always suffer. So here goes. Every living creature, in its very essence, desires to survive. In Schopenhauer's terms, is driven by the will to life. And in Spinoza's terms, Spinoza says the very essence of man is desire. It's also the essence of every living thing. And the desire to survive. How do most living things survive? Well, they have to kill other living things and eat them to survive. That's just the way it works. We didn't set this game up. The animals that are part of this manifestation and human beings didn't set this whole thing up. It's just the way the whole game works, and we're stuck with it. So animals generally eat each other, and of course we eat animals. And when you come to human beings then exploit each other. Why do they exploit each other? Because this will to life makes them feel that if they have more stuff, so more money maybe, more power, more fame, more influence, then their existence is more assured. Just obvious things like if you've got more money, then you can afford better healthcare or better food or whatever. You can have more leisure maybe. So human beings exploit each other to further their own existence. So when you go down to the mall and buy that cheap t-shirt or cheap pair of jeans or whatever, you will conveniently forget that some little kid in some sweatshop in Indonesia is being paid $1 a week to produce that. And you are, and we all do, exploit each other in a conscienceless, unconscionable kind of way. And we do it because that's in our very genes. It's the thing that drives us, this drive to survive. If you can see a pair of jeans at $5 and another pair of jeans that looks more or less the same at $100, And in one case there's a little kid being paid $1 a week to work on them, and in the other case people are being paid proper salaries, maybe a couple $100 a day to produce those genes, $100, then you'll still go and buy the cheap ones. So the key point here is that everything is exploiting everything else. It's the way the game is set up. And I've quoted this piece in Spinoza in several podcasts, and what I want to do is quote it again, if I can find it. It's one of my favourite propositions of his, and it deals with all the kinds of emotions that people manifest in their attempts to dominate each other. So here's how it goes. It follows that everyone is fond of narrating his own exploits. Yeah, we know that one, don't we? Some boring git who's just been on some holiday to Peru or somewhere a bit exotic just isn't going to let you forget about it. They're going to tell you about it every 5 minutes. Anyway, so I'll read it again. It follows that everyone is fond of narrating his own exploits and displaying the force both of his body and mind, and also that for this reason men are troublesome one to another. Well, of course they are. You know, if they're bragging to each other all the time, as Spinoza says, displaying the force of their body and mind, it's this display of power. You know, I've got this car, I've been to this restaurant, I've been on this holiday. That's what people do. They piss over each other all day. And Spinoza's just calling it out. You know, he doesn't use that word obviously, but that's basically what he's saying. And men are troublesome one to another because they do this all the time. Do not do not expect what you might call reasonable, polite behavior from people. It's not in there most of the time. Occasionally you'll meet somebody who will behave like that, but most of the time you're dealing with people who are desperate to display their power. And if that means disempowering you, they will do it. Accept it. Stop being disappointed by people's behavior. It's ridiculous. You need to just accept the way people behave. This is the way they behave, and I'll read more of Spinoza just to elaborate on the point. This is the same proposition, number 55 in part 3 of the Ethics. Again, it follows that men are naturally envious. So Spinoza is telling us there that man's natural state is one of envy. That person's got a nicer car, I hate him. That person's got a better pension than me, I hate him. That woman looks more glamorous than, you know, another woman, she hates her. Envy is our daily bread, and if you've not seen that in yourself, then you must just be totally unconscious. You need to start looking at what's going on inside yourself if you've never seen that. So again, it follows that men are naturally envious, rejoicing in the shortcomings of their equals and feeling pain at their virtues. So Schadenfreude, experiencing joy when someone experiences misfortune. So rejoicing at their shortcomings and feeling pain at their virtues. So when somebody else experiences an increase of power, we're talking about power as this being able to manifest in life as you want to. When somebody has that increase in power, we feel envy. Oh my God, he's just won the lottery. Look at that big house he's just bought, and whatever else. For whenever a man conceives his own actions, he is affected with pleasure in proportion as his actions display more perfection, and he conceives them more distinctly, that is, in proportion as he can distinguish them from others and regard them as something special. Well, we all want to be something special, don't we? And we want to be something special in the eyes of other people. If there are no other people around, we wouldn't give a damn about trying to be special. So why are we trying to be special? Because we want approval from other people. All the other chimps in the chimp park, we want their approval. Ridiculous. Forget about other people's approval. It's not worth anything. and yet the whole of society is driven by that. So, therefore, a man will take most pleasure in contemplating himself when he contemplates some quality which he denies to others. Well, of course you do, don't you? You don't want anybody else to have your special features. But if that which he affirms of himself be attributable to the idea of man or animals in general, he will not be so greatly pleased. He will, on the contrary, feel pain if he conceives that his own actions fall short when compared with those of others. This pain he will endeavour to remove by putting a wrong construction on the actions of his equals, or by, as far as he can, embellishing his own. So there you go. I could talk about that proposition for an hour. I'm not going to do. Maybe I will do on another podcast. Bore you to death. But actually, the what I've just read there is a description of the whole of society. It's a description of people trying to piss on each other with their own power. And this is the way it works. When you understand that, when you really understand it, when you've seen it in yourself, when you've seen yourself doing it, and I'll talk about that in a moment, when you've seen yourself doing it and you've seen other people doing it and you really understand it, it loses its power. And really you couldn't give a shit about what other people do or what they approve of or what they don't approve of. And it gives you your own inner power and your own sense of freedom. Because when people are depressed, they're depressed because they have no power. I mean, it's as simple as that. Somehow society or some individual or maybe a group of individuals has diminished their power, and when someone has diminished power, they feel depressed. It's just the way it works. So people have to start creating their own inner power. What is it that I want? And actually, there's no reason I shouldn't go and get it if it doesn't break the law and doesn't harm somebody else. So understanding. You need to understand that we're in a big chimp park, and basically the chimps will piss all over each other as much as they are allowed to do so. And that's the way it works. And occasionally you will meet a human being who doesn't operate like that, and that is like tasting the nectar of God. But you just have to get used to the idea that most human beings are so insecure, so inadequate, so lacking in power in themselves that they are desperately seeking your approval by bragging to you and trying to get you to approve of their wonderful new car or house or holiday they've been on or whatever. So that's the first part, understanding. And that understanding will not come from this. I'm just trying to give you a taste of what that understanding might be. I'm loath to mention this, but on Monday evening at 7:45 UK time, there's a little Spinoza group that I run. And if you want to participate in it, send me a private message or something. And there's probably room for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 more people. But anyway, that's a work group. It's ongoing and dealing with many of these issues that we're raising here. Anyway, so that number 1, understanding. Number 2, an observing eye. This practice in essence is very simple, but it's possibly the most difficult thing that you will ever do in your life. Because here's how it should work. So basically, let's say somebody's putting you down and you begin to feel a bit angry. So say your boss is saying, "Oh, this is terrible work. I can't use this. Go and do it again." So you're feeling a bit angry, maybe you're feeling a bit sad. Whatever emotions are coming up. Well, instead of reacting, instead of going back to your desk and cursing, well, you can curse if you want, but instead of going to your workmates and pissing it all out and saying, "Oh, he's a real shit," sit with that feeling. Sit with that feeling of being angry and hurt. Because what you need to develop is the ability to sit with any of the emotions that arise within you. You are not in control of those emotions. You are buffeted about by the environment, by other people, by things. I live in an earthquake zone. If there's an earthquake tomorrow, maybe I'll get flattened. Maybe somebody I care for will get flattened. And there's nothing I can do about that. And that will impact me emotionally very greatly, obviously. So we live in a world where we are constantly bumping up against other things, and they will influence us, people, events, whatever. So we have to be able to sit with whatever is going on within us. And when we sit with it, we build up within us an inner strength to be able to bear things. That is the important thing. This inner muscle, the ability to bear what is happening in our life. So this observing eye not only sits with what's going on, so maybe you're feeling extremely envious. If you are, just sit with it. Don't try and explain it away or project it onto the other person. If you're feeling envious because so-and-so's just got a job promotion and you wanted it, sit with that feeling of envy. And do not judge it. Every emotion you have is legit. It's not something that is wrong. These emotions are our true immediate response to the environment. They're not to be judged. They're true, they're real. So you feel that emotion, you sit with it, try and feel it in your body, and you don't judge it, and you don't try and make it go away, you don't try to change it. Sounds simple. It isn't simple. It may take any individual years to master that particular practice. But what happens is you start to develop an inner strength to bear any kind of emotion, and you create a little bit of distance between this eye within you that can observe these things and all the things that are going on. So even though something quite dreadful may be going on, and you will feel that emotion within you, but there's also a part of you that's just sitting back and looking and feeling and not judging and not wanting to change, because actually these emotions have energy, and what you eventually want to do is you want to be able to suck up that energy, because that energy allows something within you to grow. And Mr. Gurdjieff used to call this kind of work the work to create a permanent I within a man. And personally, I don't give a shit about the permanent I, but I do give a great deal of value to the ability not to be buffeted about by life and to suffer at every least event that happens. And that is why I'm fairly happy taking the escalator down to hell and poking around down there. Some of the ideas and the realizations that you come up with when you go down there and look around are disturbing, but I've been doing this work for a long time, so I have the inner fortitude to basically feel what I'm feeling and suck it up, just feel it, because that energy is really useful. So, this has been longer than usual, but there was no way I could make it shorter. So those 2 points: get understanding. There's a Spinoza study group on Monday evening, 7:45 UK time. If you're interested, send me a PM. And the observing eye is something you have to develop. It's an inner thing that most people don't have. They don't have it because they've never bothered to develop one. And as Mr. Gurdjieff says, those who don't plant seeds when they are young have nothing to harvest when they get older. And that's the kind of timescales you're talking about with developing these things. So, anyway, I hope that's been useful to some extent.